Browns are 2-8 overall, 1-4 at home. The Steelers 8-2 on the season, 4-1 on the road. Pittsburgh coming off Sunday's 18-16 win at home over the Ravens, while the Browns lost 35-14 at New Orleans. Steelers coach Mike Tomlin on the quick turnaround.
It's a short week, man. We're trying to get 8 pounds in a 5-pound bag. Those that learn quickly will have a place in terms of the division of labor. Those that don't, those that need physical reps, will be minimized. And I don't know that them talking about it is going to aid that. I'm just on to Cleveland. Maybe it's just the nature that this is a Thursday night, but by the time my car leaves that parking lot, I'm on the move. I've been in it too long to bathe in it, to be quite honest with you.
Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Check, check, and check. That's the sound of me getting a jump start on my holiday list. But I can't take all the credit. Kohl's makes it too easy. I got my daughter a mini instant camera, my husband his favorite cologne, my sister Kookaburra by UGG slippers, and that's just the beginning. Then I got 20% off some of my other gifts. Yep, it doesn't get better than Kohl's. Select styles. Offer valid to November 23rd. Coupons do not apply to Tech, Sephora at Kohl's, and Kookaburra by UGG. Some exclusions apply. See store or Kohl's.com for details.
I got a line.
He got a line.
She got a line.
We got 4 lines. Cricket Nation. Q finger guns. Really easy. Super stress free. 5G so fast like blazing fast. Games and memes. You'll have a blast. You can get fast 5G across 4 lines. You can get fast 5G across 4 lines. As we discuss, take it from us. We 4 are 1 Cricket Nation.
And only $25 a line. Welcome to more lines. Welcome to Cricket Nation. Smile. You're on Cricket.
Cricket 5G requires a compatible device. Is not available everywhere. Discount varies by line. Fees may apply. Terms and restrictions apply. See cricketwireless.com for details.
No way football is played in the fall and winter
because the hits don't hurt as much when you're numb. Get the lowdown on all the sports action coming up right here.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Welcome to Football Full Circle on this Thursday, live right here on SportsGrid Radio and Sirius XM Channel 159. He is the mastermind of the pigskin. That is Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens. We are already up and running on this Thursday. No wheel plays on Football Full Circle, only winners. As a new week around the National Football League, week number 12 kicks off tonight. Should be a gnarly weather evening on the shores of Lake Erie in Cleveland, Ohio. The Browns and the Steelers in a game that might resemble an old school AFC North battle. We will break down Thursday Night Football to kick off week 12. All the news you need around the NFL for the rest of the weekend ahead. And of course, with just 2 more Saturdays remaining in the college football regular season, we take an early peek at week number 13. Lisi guy, as a wise man once told me, this is what it's all about.
It is, and that person was probably the smartest man on earth. I'm assuming because he knows
the crypto markets are booming, baby.
Crypto, and this, that, the other. Great week of college football, I'll say that. Everybody's bashing it. I love this week of college football. So SEC, neutral site games at Yankee Stadium. I mean, that's great. And we have a great Thursday night game in terms of the divisional matchup, a 2-8 Cleveland Brown team, but, still gutty and playing well, for the most part, under Jameis Winston. Their, offense putting up points. 36.5 is the total. And we have the hottest team potentially in the conference in Pittsburgh. Don't stop now, Russ. Let Russ cook straight to the AFC Championship game. Give him the title now. Everybody loves Pittsburgh. This is it.
4 starts as a Steeler for Russell Wilson, 4 victories. Pittsburgh has won 5 consecutive games, is 8-2 this year with a cover in all 8. But a divisional duel on a short week Thursday night football game can change all of that. Pittsburgh right now, 3.5-point road favorite in Cleveland to kick off week number 12. Total stands at 36.5. Joe, before we dive even deeper into the numbers, it should be shared. The weather forecast for tonight in Northeast Ohio, not great. We've had some really good football weather throughout this year. Now into later November, is that starting to take a turn? Temperatures around 25 degrees Fahrenheit. We are expecting rain, sleet, turning into snow and some pretty hefty gusty winds as well. Not quite as bad, some of those updated projections of what we thought even earlier on this Thursday, only about 15 miles per hour sustained. But Joe, for most of the day, we were expecting 25 mile per hour sustained winds and gusts up to 40 miles per hour. Those might have settled down just a little bit until after the game comes to a close around midnight tonight there in Cleveland. The handicap for the weather important, Joe, because it's one of the reasons we see that minimal total of 36 and a hook.
Yeah, and, 36 and a half, I mean, I'm still intrigued to maybe go over that total. Yeah. Now, it might affect the kicking game more than the offenses for the most part. You still have two competent quarterbacks that could still throw the football. They don't have to throw it 40 or 50 yards downfield, but shorter throws. And I expect, both teams to be a little bit aggressive, especially early on. Cleveland's playing with house money. I expect, a huge turnout in terms of the fan base. They hate Pittsburgh. They would love nothing more than to derail Russell Wilson and the Pittsburgh momentum right now. So, again, we'll see what we have. I mean, I know Pittsburgh played a lower scoring game against a high-powered offense in terms of Baltimore, but it is a short week. So I still like the total over. I know there's bad weather, but I'm taking a shot tonight. I'm going contrarian.
So I actually bet the under earlier this week of a worse number, 35 and a half, expecting the weather to hold up and to be even potentially worse by the time we got to Thursday night. Not because of the rain or the wintry mix or even snow. That really doesn't impact offensive schemes as much, except maybe slowing down the pace ever so slightly. Everybody will tell you, the thing that impacts an offensive game plan, the schematic, the breakdown, what you are going to do through the air is wind above all else. So when we were projected to have 23 to 25 mile per hour wind sustained tonight with 40 miles per hour in terms of those gusts of how windy it could be, I thought this was a dead under. Joe, if the winds calm down, like some of those latest models are showing, then I actually agree with you. I think we see some points, and one of the reasons why on this 5-game win streak for Pittsburgh, they had gone over in 4 consecutive games prior to last week's affair against the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Steelers have covered in all 8 victories this season. In fact, Joe, post Big Ben, after Ben Roethlisberger retired at the end of 2021, so starting in 2022 and beyond, the Steelers have been the second best cover team as a favorite in all of the National Football League, only behind Detroit. 12-7 ATS as the favored side over the last 2.5 years. 4-2 both straight up and against the spread this year as a favorite as well. And there has been some glimpses, of course, with Jameis Winston as the starting quarterback for the Browns. The outright upset is more than a touchdown underdog at home against another AFC North rival in Baltimore. But, Joe, as an underdog this year, the Browns have not been great. Just 2-5 straight up, 3-4 against the spread. In the 8 losses this year for Cleveland, only 1 cover. In those 8 L's, it was against Philadelphia over a month ago.
Yeah, and again, that's why I think the rushing attack needs to be a little bit more productive with Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford in this matchup. That goes into the strength of the Steelers' front 7. They shut down Derrick Henry, but again, it is a short week. You never know what you're going to expect. And I do expect Jameis to be a little bit more aggressive, maybe on 1st and 2nd down, to potentially open up the rushing attack with Nick Chubb. But it really comes down to if Cleveland's going to win this game, it has to be their defense, right? We've seen them give up a ton of yards to New Orleans last week. The week prior to that in the bye, it was 27 points, huge plays over the top with Quentin Johnson in L.A., and Justin Herbert. So this defense needs to get better, and it's not going to be easy, but we'll see how it plays out. I do like Cleveland with the 3.5. I actually think they could be live as well on the money line. But again, they're going to need that defense to step up and, more importantly, force turnovers tonight.
Yeah, Joe, there is no doubt about it, right? Cleveland wants to play spoiler to their competition in the AFC North, as they had just 3 weeks ago against the Baltimore Ravens, winning outright in that game, getting more than a touchdown. This is just 3.5, but in a game that features a total of 36 in a hook, and that could look a little bit ugly, or at least old school, based on that expected weather tonight, that hook could be tremendously important. Joe, let's talk some quarterbacks here, because with Russell Wilson, the Steelers are averaging about a touchdown more per game in scoring average in his 4 starts than they did with Justin Fields. And that features even including a game last week, not scoring a single touchdown and still holding off the Ravens 18-16. Field goal kicking in the wind could be key, but Chris Boswell has been sensational this year. 6 of 6 last week for Pittsburgh. When you look at Russell Wilson's numbers, 196 and a hook, a very minimal price tonight, Joe, against Cleveland.
Yeah, it is. And again, is game plan going to be a factor in this matchup? I still think he has to get through that total for potentially Pittsburgh to pull this game out, because if it is a lower scoring game like it was last week, the fact that it's on the road, I mean, Cleveland could play that style of game, right? I mean, that's the one thing. If this game does get high tempo, up tempo, that's where Cleveland has shown a weakness against lesser offenses. So again, I still think if you're Pittsburgh, push the tempo, get Russell over that number, and then you could open up the rushing attack with Jalen Warren and Najee.
First 2 games for Russell Wilson as a Steeler, at least 264 passing yards. Last 2, 195 against the Commanders, but 3 touchdowns. 205 yards only against the Ravens, and a pick. We'll talk Jameis Winston and the rest of the prop market up next on FFC.
Ball is coming.
Don't look like an idiot at work. Know your stuff. Football and everything else.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
The United States vetoed a UN resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza.
With the SportsGrid News Flash, I'm Trey Westerberg.
The Americans say the resolution was not linked to an immediate release of hostages still held by Hamas. Meanwhile, in Lebanon, a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hezbollah was showing signs of progress. However, Israel's defense minister says his country wants the right to act militarily against Hezbollah in any agreement to end the fighting. Texas is offering a parcel of rural ranch land along the U.S.-Mexico border to use as a staging area for potential mass deportations under President-elect Donald Trump. The property, which Texas originally purchased last month, is located in rural Starr County in the Rio Grande Valley. Republican Dawn Buckingham, the Texas Land Commissioner, sent a letter November 14th to Trump extending the offer. Trump has said he plans to begin his deportation efforts on the first day of his presidency.
I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
I got a line.
He got a line.
She got a line.
We got 4 lines. Cricket Nation, Q finger guns, really easy, super stress-free. 5G so fast, like blazing fast. Games and memes, you'll have a blast. You can get fast 5G across 4 lines. You can get fast 5G across 4 lines. As we discuss, take it from us. We 4 are 1 Cricket Nation.
And only $25 a line. Welcome to more lines. Welcome to Cricket Nation. Smile, you're on Cricket.
Cricket 5G requires a compatible device and is not available everywhere. Discount varies by line. Fees may apply. Terms and restrictions apply. See cricketwireless.com for details.
Not sure how much you know about Progressive Insurance. You may know us for insuring your home and auto. You may know a couple of our commercials. But what you may not know is that since 2013, Progressive has been honoring veterans with vehicle donations through the annual Keys to Progress Veteran Vehicle Giveaway Program, giving back to those who gave so much. Now, you probably didn't wake up today saying, I really wish I knew more about Progressive Insurance, but this seemed like the type of thing people wouldn't mind hearing about. Find out more about how we're dedicated to our customers and communities at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
Fall is almost here.
It's time to stow the lawnmower and get ready for all that glorious action coming your way. Stay tuned to SportsGrid for all the strategies, angles, and info you need to get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle. It is FFC. Week number 12 of the NFL season starts tonight on a Thursday in Cleveland between the Browns and the Steelers. 3.5-point spread in favor of Pittsburgh. Total 36.5. How much will the weather impact what we see tonight in Cleveland, Ohio? Joe, we talked about Russell Wilson, his minimal number of 196.5. Part of that is probably weather impacted, right? Rain, sleet, snow, and some decent wind. If Jameis Winston wasn't playing in the wind, his number would be a lot higher as well, albeit against a really stout Steelers defense. 217.5 is the number on Jameis Winston. In his 3 starts for the Browns, at least 235 yards, and in 2 of 3, 330 plus against Baltimore, nearly 400, 395 a week ago against New Orleans. And another Jameis Winston factor, especially if the wind is whipping, anytime INT price for Jameis to throw a pick tonight, minus 198.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably bank on that at some point, even if you have a end of the first half or end of game, should they lose this matchup. But I mean, again, 217.5 for Jameis. He struggled a little bit against LA. That offensive line didn't really protect him. He was under duress and made a critical decision in the red zone that cost his team points. But, again, this is a divisional game, and I still think Cleveland's built to get through that number. I mean, we saw Tillman step up. You still see Njoku, an above-average tight end. And again, Nick Chubb or Jerome Ford coming out of the backfield catching passes. I still think will allow Jameis Winston to get through the 217.5. I took him tonight. I'm going completely contrarian. Took him 2+ touchdowns tonight, Ben. So on top of the yards. So that's the way I played it.
Listen, if the weather was not impacting this game at all, I'd be all in on Jameis Winston, probably playing from behind, trailing Pittsburgh tonight to go over that number. It's really going to be a live betting spot show, because until I see that win pregame or as the first quarter starts to play out, then I might be able to find a couple of spots. Because if Jameis is going over 217.5, love Njoku's price. He has been over his number of 44.5. That is, of course, limited because of the anticipated weather tonight in 2 of the 3 games with Jameis. 81 yards last week, 9 grabs on 9 targets. I'd also look at Cedric Tillman, who has gone over the number in all 3 games with Jameis Winston, of his number in the low to mid-40s. 47 last week was his bare minimum, 80+ in the first 2 with Jameis Winston. Or even Jerry Jeudy, Joe, who came on in a huge way last week in the Big Easy. 124 yards, including one of the longest passing plays in Cleveland Browns franchise history, 89-yard touchdown catch and run for Jerry Jeudy. I would also say, if the weather does hold off and the wind is tempered ever so slightly, I'd look at George Pickens. 58.5 is his receiving yards prop, a number he has been well over, with at least 74 in all 4 starts that Russell Wilson has made as well. So there's a lot of receiver numbers, Joe, that right now are a little bit restrictive because we are anticipating those wins and the gusts tonight in Cleveland, Ohio. But if the wins are not that bad, I'll rush immediately in the live betting market with a profit boost on FanDuel to go hammer a couple of numbers.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way you could play it, right? And I agree with you as well. Better to take a wait-and-see approach. If the wind is a factor, then obviously you're going to get abbreviated or adjusted lines, maybe even lower than the 36.5 total that we see posted pre-kick. So it's a good look. Again, I think if you're Cleveland, you throw caution to the wind. You're not going to go. You're 2-8. You have nothing to lose right now. And Jameis maybe wants to win another job. I mean, you can never say never in terms of the backup quarterbacks that have found themselves in great situations leading their team. Look at Sam Darnold, right? So, these players want to step up. The fact that it is a divisional game and even Stefanski on the hot seat, he gets this win. He can erase all the critics with the Deshaun Watson situation. I mean, it's amazing. He goes from coach of the year to all of a sudden on the hot seat, but it is what it is right now.
Right, but part of that, I think, is the Deshaun Watson situation. Maybe not getting the best out of Deshaun, but is that on the head coach or the quarterback? Stefanski has won 2 NFL Coach of the Year awards in the last half decade. I don't think he is in danger of losing his job after this offseason. Joe, if the weather is rather gnarly tonight, of course, there will be a focus on the ground game, and Najee Harris's rushing yards prop is on the steady incline as of this Thursday morning, with 64.5 around 8 a.m. Now about 4.5 hours later, 73 and a hook. Do you expect a heavy dosage of Najee Harris tonight against Cleveland?
I mean, they're going to utilize him, but I mean, if you're Cleveland, you have to take that away for the most part, right? Put the game still on Russell Wilson. The fact that he's on the road, the fact that you have the home field advantage, behind you. This is an opportunity to really take away the rushing attack. I still don't think Pittsburgh, even though Russell has exceeded expectations in terms of the prop market and they're putting up numbers, I still think that's a weakness of this defense. I still don't think, Pittsburgh's offense is really, the best in the land. We're not putting it up with the likes of Baltimore consistently over a 17-game season or some of the others that have been putting up points. So for me, I want to take that away and then force Russell Wilson into long third down. So I would say no and lean to the under right here just because I expect Myles Garrett and that front seven to be stout against the run, at least early on.
I like Jaylen Warren's number, at least 41 yards in 4 consecutive games for Pittsburgh. 32.5 is his rushing yards prop, but the usage has been there, even when Najee Harris has been solid on the ground as well. 8.5 rush attempts prop for Jaylen Warren. Some juice on the over. I have already bet the over in that spot. On the other side, Joe, you expect Jameis Winston to air it out. How much Nick Chubb do we see against this Steelers stout rushing defense?
See, now Nick Chubb is one. What did he have? Like 40 yards last week. He was under his number. I altered Nick Chubb at plus 128 to 60 plus tonight.
Gotcha. I figured there would be an alt on the ground somewhere. If not Najee Harris, then going to Nick Chubb. Pittsburgh, 4th best rushing defense in the league. The Browns got gouged a week ago. Taysom Hill had 138 rushing yards and 3 scores. So what does this game mean for the AFC North race? Find out next.
There's smart.
And there's not smart.
Not smart is hope as a strategy. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Keep it here.
And win. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. The SportsGrid Radio Network presents This Date in Sports History.
Football history on rain-soaked Franklin Field, Philadelphia. The ball carrier in these rare scenes is the galloping ghost himself.
1925, Red Grange plays his final game at the University of Illinois and signs with the Chicago Bears. Papa Bear, George Halas.
He was probably the most publicized player of all time.
For SportsGrid Radio, I'm Mike DeMurgis.
The Technology Minute with George Capalbo.
Maybe you've heard of the infinite monkey theory. A monkey randomly typing on a typewriter for an infinite amount of time could eventually type out the complete works of Shakespeare.
Though this be madness, yet there is method in it.
A University of Technology in Sydney decided to test this theory. What would happen if a reasonable population of 200,000 monkeys all typing 1 letter per second until the end of time? The universe, a cold, dead cinder. The number 10 with 99 zeros, years. The answer? There's only a 5% chance that a single monkey would even type the word bananas.
So what you're saying is, it's not to be.
Follow me at Capalbo on X, and stay tuned to the Technology Minute for more cool stuff like this.
The early line.
The Denver Broncos, sometimes you want to show what a team is made of. And this is why Sean Payton is a great coach. You lose in devastating fashion last week. You get home and absolutely play probably your best football game of the season. That shows you a guy that's won a Super Bowl before and has the ear of that locker room and understands, like, hey, we let one slip away. Let's not let 2 games slip away. They were fantastic. Credit to that locker room and the head coach.
It's the early line with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Weekdays, 8 a.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on the SportsGrid Radio Network. Wherever you go,
there you are.
Download the SportsGrid mobile app and we'll be right there with you.
So now you can get the winning edge anywhere.
Even while the wife's talking to you.
If you've got an earbud.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle. It is FFC. Short week Thursday night football game in division. Adds on just a little bit of significance. Joe, last week for the Pittsburgh Steelers to cap off their 5-game win streak with a huge victory against the Baltimore Ravens. It was really big for the Steelers, not only to knock off a divisional foe, but because it was the first divisional game for the Steelers this year. Now 2 consecutive weeks in division taking on the Cleveland Browns. Joe, Pittsburgh right now is 8-2. has a 1.5 game lead atop the AFC North in front of Baltimore, a team currently who they own the direct head-to-head tiebreaker with. They will see the Ravens again in week number 16. And yet the Steelers, Joe, are just a -160 favorite to win the division. Are you surprised that number is not stronger? Do you think ultimately Pittsburgh wins the AFC North?
I mean, it's tough because I don't buy into Pittsburgh with Russell, right? You know, even though he's overexceeding expectations, defense has been fantastic right now. And if they're going to play that way the rest of the regular season, I still give the inside track. The problem that I have with backing a team like Baltimore is that defense hasn't shown me anything, especially in big games, right? So again, if this was the defense that it was a couple of years ago, I'd say, yeah, Baltimore would be my pick, but I can't right now. So by default, yeah, the Steelers are the best and most complete team, but I'm sort of iffy taking that number right now. Would it shock you if Baltimore steals it down the stretch? It wouldn't. It's just that the defense, to me, isn't good enough to warrant that type of run right now.
The defense isn't good enough.
Baltimore's.
Oh, Baltimore's defense.
Right, like if you're going to take anybody outside of Pittsburgh, right?
Right.
It's going to be Baltimore. But I don't know if Baltimore's defense can carry them to where they can win 6 games down the stretch because of how teams have abused them. So right now, yeah, I'd say the -160 price for Pittsburgh, but it's by default right now.
So both teams, Joe, have very difficult schedules remaining this season. Technically, based on opponent win-loss record, Baltimore's is harder than that of the Steelers. The Ravens still have the Steelers again at home, and the Eagles. The Chargers this week on Monday night in the Battle of the Harbaughs in Los Angeles, and a game against the Texans. The easy games for the Ravens remain the Giants. That should be a win. And the Browns, that should also be a win. But the first game against Cleveland and Jameis's first start this year also should have been a comfortable win. The Steelers technically have the Browns tonight in the first of 2 against Cleveland. And the Bengals are a 4-7 team who they also see twice. But we know Cincinnati is not your average 4-7 team, that depending on how the rest of the season goes, those games could be incredibly compelling for Pittsburgh because Cincy might be fully in and need them to win those football games and to have a chance at the postseason. The Steelers also have outside of the division, again, the Ravens one more time, and the Eagles and the Chiefs. Neither team has an easy run of it, where you'd look and be like, well, Pittsburgh's got a very easy schedule. That price should be better than -160. It's a gauntlet. Same story for Baltimore. Not much of an advantage there. I'm just a little bit surprised, Joe, because the 1.5 game advantage now for Pittsburgh is crucial, right? And we saw this last week on a Thursday night game between the Eagles and the Commanders. The Eagles were favored at home, unlike the Steelers, who were the dog at home against Baltimore. The Eagles win, extend their lead to a 1.5 games, -550 for Philadelphia, still having to see Washington in Washington, week number 16. Similar story for the Steelers, but you can see it's not -550 like the Eagles have.
No, right. And you know, but again, you would believe more in the Eagles in that situation just because you feel like they're more complete, right? The Steelers, like at the start of the year, there was so many question marks regarding this team. And it was like, okay, who was going to be the starter? Then Russell goes down. Justin Fields leads them to a 4-2 record. Russell Wilson comes back. And now all of a sudden it's like, hey, they're playing the best football potentially, just like Buffalo and Kansas City for the most part in the AFC right now. Where did that come from? It's like they snuck up on everybody. They're not doing it flashy, but they're grinding out wins. And I think that's a problem as well. Is like, okay, if this game does potentially become into a shootout, or can the Steelers consistently score 30 plus a week?
Right.
That is the concern.
I think, Joe, both of us would agree that both Pittsburgh and Baltimore will be playoff teams, which is solid. Can the Steelers get to their first AFC championship game in nearly a decade since 2016? +950, the price on Pittsburgh right now, 5th best to win the AFC. Other news from the NFL next.
The winning edge.
You've got it.
But not everybody has it, because not everybody listens to us.
But we're working on that.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Progressive presents the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders. Thursday night football, it's a quick turnaround for both the Steelers and the Browns. They play tonight in Cleveland. The Browns are 2-8 overall, 1-4 at home. The Steelers 8-2 on the season, 4-1 on the road. Pittsburgh coming off Sunday's 18-16 win at home over the Ravens, while the Browns lost 35-14 at New Orleans. Steelers coach Mike Tomlin on the quick turnaround.
It's a short week, man. We're trying to get 8 pounds in a 5-pound bag. Those that learn quickly will have a place in terms of the division of labor. Those that don't, those that need physical reps, will be minimized. And I don't know that them talking about it is going to aid that. I'm just on to Cleveland. Maybe it's just the nature that this is a Thursday night, but by the time my car leaves that parking lot, I'm on the move. I've been in it too long to bathe in it, to be quite honest with you.
Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Shop early, save big all month long during Black Friday build-up at Lowe's. Right now, get select pre-lit artificial Christmas trees starting at just $59.98. Don't wait to save. Shop these deals today, in-store or online, because Lowe's knows deals. Discount taken at time of purchase while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
Finding the perfect gifts for everyone on your list takes time, and the holidays can get a little busy. So let Macy's help you get a jump on your shopping with our Black Friday sale happening right now. It's your chance to find the best deals on the best gifts before the holiday rush, like cozy puffers and coats and more of the season's best styles. So get your gifts at Macy's now, and when you're cool, calm, and collected during holiday crunch time, you'll have yourself and Macy's to thank. Savings off already reduced prices. Exclusions apply.
Days are getting cooler.
The shadows are getting longer.
You know what that means? It's football weather. So bundle up and keep it here for all the latest strategies and gridiron information.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, it is FFC. We'll get to some college football in just a matter of moments. But Lisi Guy, still around the NFL as the rest of the league gets back at practice yesterday for week number 12. And at practice yesterday, the New York Giants did something rather peculiar. Brian Daboll was asked about the quarterback situation. Of course, we know that Daniel Jones has been benched. He is no longer the starter. It will be Tommy DeVito making the start on Sunday at home in MetLife against the Buccaneers. Drew Lock is not even the guy who is going to start in place of Danny Dimes, despite being paid $5 million to be acquired in the offseason. And Joe, Daniel Jones might not even be the backup or even the third-string emergency quarterback. Tim Boyle, who was elevated off the practice squad earlier this week, is more than likely the third-string quarterback, which would make Daniel Jones quarterback number 4 out of 4. What?
Yeah, well, that's the NFL. And, you know, I brought this up last night, and this is why, Ben, I can't stand the NFL. I love football. I love high school. I love Pee Wee. College, you know, is where my heart and soul is. But the NFL is a business, and you know this as well as anybody, right? And the reason why Drew Lock isn't starting is potentially because the Giants owe him maybe anywhere from $500,000 to, let's say, $1.5 million, depending upon how incentives play out. You know, should he play the next 6 or 7 games of the regular season? I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it, too, is that, you know, Tommy DeVito's the hometown kid, right? He did perform admirably in a couple of games and during his stint last year, and the team's not going anywhere. So it's a twofold thing. It's money, and it's the ability. Who's going to put, you know, asses in the seats so that at least the Maras and the Tishes can get at least a recoup on the money that they lay out from the fans' perspective. And that's what the NFL is all about. That's why there's a union, and that's why these things play out, and it's unfortunate. That's why college football, Nick Saban puts a freshman over a senior, right? Because he doesn't care. It's his boat. You can't do that in the NFL, and it's unfortunate how things played out here, but it is what it is. I'm sure there's a lawsuit, and, you know, the agent will get involved, and we'll hear all this garbage. that'll play out over the next few weeks.
And again, when you're Daniel Jones in this perspective, you've got your money. They're going to pay you $40 million to do nothing except have some fun at practice. Great deal.
Yeah.
For the New York Giants, though, Joe, moving forward, we'll start with this week and then we'll go beyond because there's already a focus, of course, on the future for this Giants organization. The G-Men are catching 5.5 points at home against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have lost 4 straight games, mainly because injuries have been a big component. Tampa also emerging out of the bye like New York is. 5.5 point spread, a little bit of energy perhaps with Tommy DeVito, as we saw in times last year, of course. How are you approaching Sunday at MetLife with the Bucs laying 5.5?
I thought the Bucs were the best team in their division. That was prior to Mike Evans and Godwin going down. And I know Evans is back for this matchup. The problem is he going to be rusty? What are you going to get, big picture out of this offense as a whole? I still think we can get through this total. I still want to lay it with Tampa Bay, Ben, because, again, I know DeVito's admirable. But, again, this game resembles, to me, a do-or-die situation for Tampa Bay, just the way it was, Minnesota and Tennessee. We saw a similar line. Minnesota, wins and covers on the road. Give me Tampa Bay, but I'm more inclined to take the over than I am anything else.
I don't mind that look as well. That number right now standing around 41.5, and the Bucs have gone over in a lot of games this year. Over in 6 straight prior to the game against San Francisco that stayed under a total of 50. But that game still featured 43 points. Joe, on this 4-game skid, because of injuries, the Buccaneers have been booked as the underdog in all 4. They have lost every game, but by double digits only once to Baltimore. And the other 3 have been by 6 points or less. They have covered in their last 2 as an underdog, now laying 5.5. Other news around the NFL, Joe. We talk about the San Francisco 49ers. They won against Tampa out of the bye. We expected them to keep the good times going. Injuries have defined this season for the 49ers. This past Sunday, getting beat at home as a 5.5-point favorite against a divisional foe in Seattle. We did not see Nick Bosa for most of the second half. He got injured during the game. The defense now dealing with injuries. The offense was supposedly getting healthier with the return of Christian McCaffrey. And then George Kittle missed the game last Sunday with a hamstring injury against the Seahawks. Kittle telling media yesterday, Joe, he is ready to go. He will be out there on Sunday in a renewal of the rivalry in the NFC against the Green Bay Packers. What do you think?
I still think Green Bay is a legit, and I mean legit, playoff contender. The fact that they're at home laying 2.5 to a 500 team, I don't care if it's San Francisco, I'm going to lay the 2.5. I believe Jordan Love and that offense are more consistent. I believe in the defense. I believe in LaFleur. And again, I just don't know where San Francisco's at. They're searching for answers. They're not consistent from a defensive perspective as well. Offenses are starting to rip them over the top. Give me Green Bay. Again, Green Bay wins this game and the Niners are under 500. Look out, baby, because then Arizona could be cooking with house money in terms of the division.
No doubt about it, Joe. And I still think most importantly for San Francisco, it's winning the NFC West, where the Niners are behind the 8 ball, not just because they trail the Cardinals by a game in the standings, despite losing to Arizona, not just because they're part of the jumbled mess that is 3 teams all at 5-5. Joe, there's a lot of good teams around the NFC that are above 500. The Vikings at 8-2, the Packers at 7-3, the Commanders at 7-4. For San Francisco to claw out of that hole, to earn a playoff bid, that's pretty difficult. And, Joe, what holds them back in division is games like Sunday against the Seahawks. They're 1-3. So some of those divisional tiebreakers and the advantages there, not really in San Francisco's favor. It is a critical game. But, Joe, I agree with you. And it's notable also just to see the Niners with a plus on the money line or in the spread. They have been booked as a favorite in every single game, including Super Bowl 58 against Kansas City. Every single game since the start of last year. This would be the first time for the Niners as an underdog since they were a very short road underdog in Philadelphia in the 2022 NFC Championship game. it gets very precarious very quickly for the 49ers if they cannot win this week and continue, Joe, to dip below 500. Playoff price on the Niners right now, minus 220 to miss the postseason.
Yeah, and, it wouldn't shock me. We keep talking about teams that make it to the championship game, whether they have the killer instinct or does it take a little bit out of them. Take a look at San Francisco, 2 Super Bowls over the past, 5 or 6 seasons. The stress and the intensity to know that it's boom or bust for them. It's go big or go home. That's why you give so much credit to Detroit, how they're hammering teams, and they're the hunted, right? They're hungry, but they're getting it done. I mean, you don't see that out of San Francisco. They're struggling. No. There's no offensive identity, even now with Christian McCaffrey in that offense. Brock Purdy struggling. Deebo Samuel, invisible man. So that is the problem. That is the problem with, I would sell it right now, Ben. Again, on top of the team, I think Shanahan has some issues too, because it's clear he hasn't changed his approach, and that's why they're just 500.
And Lisa, guy, I think, again, when you look at San Francisco early in the year, it was, oh my God, Christian McCaffrey hasn't played. Now we lose Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel dealing with nagging injuries. Same with Jawan Jennings and George Kittle. Obviously, Ayuk is not returning, but everybody else fairly healthy. It's the defense. Nick Bosa banged up. Javon Hargrave not there. Dre Greenlaw still returning from a torn Achilles. A lot of issues for this 49ers team. Might be too much to overcome. Some college football conversations next.
Yeah, it's getting cooler.
Football weather is here.
Stay tuned for all the latest odds, strategies, and info. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
The United States vetoed a UN resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza.
With the SportsGrid News Flash, I'm Trey Westerberg.
The Americans say the resolution was not linked to an immediate release of hostages still held by Hamas. Meanwhile, in Lebanon, a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hezbollah was showing signs of progress. However, Israel's defense minister says his country wants the right to act militarily against Hezbollah in any agreement to end the fighting. Texas is offering a parcel of rural ranch land along the U.S.-Mexico border to use as a staging area for potential mass deportations under President-elect Donald Trump. The property, which Texas originally purchased last month, is located in rural Starr County in the Rio Grande Valley. Republican Dawn Buckingham, the Texas land commissioner, sent a letter November 14th to Trump extending the offer. Trump has said he plans to begin his deportation efforts on the first day of his presidency.
I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
Finding the perfect gifts for everyone on your list takes time, and the holidays can get a little busy. So let Macy's help you get a jump on your shopping with our Black Friday sale happening right now. It's your chance to find the best deals on the best gifts before the holiday rush, like cozy puffers and coats and more of the season's best styles. So get your gifts at Macy's now, and when you're cool, calm, and collected during holiday crunch time, you'll have yourself and Macy's to thank. Savings off already reduced prices. Exclusions apply.
Oh no, my phone.
Hear that? It's the sound of a skater dropping her phone and smashing it on the ice. Yep, it's definitely broken. But at Verizon, we got you. Black Friday starts now. Trade in any phone, any condition from one of our top brands and get a new Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus on Unlimited Ultimate and Watch 7 and Tab S9 FE 5G. That's up to $1,900 in value. So you'll save big on 3 great gifts. Hurry into Verizon this Black Friday. Service plan required for Watch and Tablet. Up to $1,900 value based on phone, watch, and tablet. Trade in and additional terms apply. See Verizon.com for details.
Ask any player and they'll tell you any advantage is important.
That's where we come in.
SportsGrid delivers gaming strategies and analysis 7 days a week.
The winning edge.
It's your advantage to more winning
more often.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Let's talk some college football now, shall we? We are just a few days away from the second to final Saturday of the 2024 college football regular season. It's the penultimate weekend of the regular season. It is week number 13. And Lacey Guy, for the 5th time this year, we have a top 5 tilt in college football. This time in Columbus, Ohio. Wait, Michigan and Ohio State play at the end of the year. That's right, they do. It's the Indiana football Hoosiers on Saturday, headed to the Shoe to take on number 2 Ohio State. Of course, Indiana has been a lot of focus and conjecture surrounding IU as a football program in the last week and a half. It was a cool story. It was fun to be 10-0 for the first time in program history. And then when Indiana started to come for maybe a couple of college football playoff spots from the SEC, oh, they haven't played anybody. That schedule's so easy that Auburn could be 10-0 playing that schedule. Sounding like a bunch of idiot lunatics. Anyway, Joe, as we get ready for this matchup, top 5 tilt at the Shoe on Saturday, Ohio State booked as a 13.5-point favorite against number 5 Indiana. 51.5 is the total. Are the odds makers incorrect, or is it justified to see the Buckeyes as nearly a 2-touchdown favorite in a top 5 matchup?
Well, it was justified in terms of the opening line, 10.5, and we've seen movement now, 3 points from Sunday to midweek Thursday here, 13.5, because Ohio State, from the series perspective, has won 28 straight games straight up against the Hoosiers. They haven't lost, I think, since 1988 back in the day. Right. So that, it's been complete dominance. Here's the other factor as well. It's just perception, right? We saw Indiana beat up on Michigan. I did bet Michigan that game. That was a couple of weeks ago. They're coming out of a bye. Right. It's just like, oh, well, the best team in the conference still, even though it's Oregon, is perceived to be Ohio State, right? So It's that perception. They're going to go into Columbus and knock them off. But I will say, we've seen now McLaughlin, the center, out for Ohio State. It's what I call a divergence. 80 or 90% supposedly of the tickets are on Indiana, but the line is moving in favor of Ohio State. Part of that is the series. What's the other part? It's not due to the fact that McLaughlin being out. That's the most important component of an offensive line is the center. You have an experience there. They can't make line calls. Here's the thing. I went back and forth on this game. I'm not going to be betting this game. But the more I look at it, the more I'm inclined to take the line movement, the 13.5. I don't believe, Ben, that 13.5 points, 90% of the public is on Indiana. I still think you'll have maybe 60% on Ohio State. I don't buy the numbers, so I'll take the Hoosiers plus the 13.5.
And we have not seen Indiana as an underdog this season. However, they are one of 6 FBS programs around the country to cover an 80% or more of their games. IU is 8-2 against the spread, outperforming even the comfortable expectations of the odds makers by more than 2 touchdowns per game. The cover margin for IU is 14.6 points per game. Joe, big news this week, like you mentioned. Ohio State's transfer center from Alabama, Seth McLaughlin, out for the remainder of this season. Really unfortunate scenario. Torn Achilles in practice. They have had issues with the anchor of that left side. Joshua Simmons, one of the best left tackles in the game, out for the year. They tried to put in the backup, Zen Mahalski. He got injured. They moved the left guard, Donovan Jackson, out to left tackle. Now have to fill in to that center spot. It's going to be Connor Hinsman and Austin Saraveld, as I tried to look up that name quickly. Saraveld, who is going to fill in on this manufactured offensive line. That's not great, Joe, because you can argue Indiana's schedule, right? Nobody really disputes it. It's 106th in the country. But really what you are arguing against the Hoosiers for, if you are going to make the argument, you better be making the argument that any team could do this, any mid-tier SEC school could do to the Hoosiers' schedule what Indiana has done. That's win 9 of 10 games by at least 2 touchdowns. That's have a victory margin of 30.1 points per game. That's the best in the country. That's having the best point differential in the country at plus 308. The only FBS program that has a point differential of plus 280 or better. Again, one of 6 programs covering in 8 of 10 games this year to have the best cover margin in the country of 14.6 points per game. So I understand this is a step up in competition that Indiana has not seen on paper this year. But because of that, Indiana understands what they are entering to. And Indiana, Joe, is the only team in the country that averages 450-plus yards on offense. that scores at least 38 points per game on offense, that limits opponents to less than 17 points per game on offense, that allows on defense, that allows less than 300 yards per game on defense. Indiana is the only one. You know what else Indiana is pretty darn good at? Getting after the quarterback and defending the run. They are the best rushing defense in the country, and they are one of 13 football programs around the country with more than 30 sacks this year against a banged-up patchwork offensive line for Ohio State. That is concerning for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, it is. And the other factor that I'll just put the cherry on top is they have a veteran quarterback in terms of Curtis Rourke, right? I mean, say what you will. He played in the MAC, but he played in big games before. He's not going to be fazed by the environment. And I believe in Kirk Cignetti from a game plan perspective that, his troops will be ready to at least be prepared for the explosiveness of the Ohio State offense. And that's a cause of concern right now. I still, I have not seen this offense or this team as a whole. And I know they beat up on Marshall and some of the other teams, and it was a great win against Penn State. Not taken away from that. But a complete game, the most complete game that you want to say Ohio State played offensively, they lost to Oregon, right? They moved up and down the field, but still lost the game. Indiana has an opportunity, and I always say this, they're playing with house money. Nobody expects them to win. Now you want to give that team 2 touchdowns. In that type of situation, I'll take the points.
We're immediate market movers, Joe. That line is now just 11.5 in favor of Ohio State. What the 2 points of movement was for? Anybody's guess, unless we missed out on some injury news outside of Seth McLaughlin, which I don't expect to be the case. More around football full circle and college football next.
The boys of summer become the champions of fall.
The World Series is on its way.
And SportsGrid brings you every angle. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. SportsGrid TV and radio networks are the premier streaming video and audio channels dedicated to serving the sports wagering audience. Found on major smart TV platforms and streaming on SportsGrid Radio and Sirius XM Channel 159. SportsGrid's real-time data, expert commentary, and entertaining analysis transform viewers into informed sports enthusiasts. Our weekday radio lineup begins with the early line at 8 a.m. Eastern with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie joins Kevin Walsh on Money Line at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Football Full Circle at noon Eastern. Kaplan and crew join the party at 1 p.m. Eastern, and Pharrell Coast to Coast keeps things rolling from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Get in the mix with Kevin Walsh and Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m. Eastern. Evenings simmer with Carver and Lisi, then boils over with Gabe Moritzi on Sports Rage Late Night at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find out where to find SportsGrid that's best for you, go to sportsgrid.com. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right. For about $50 a month, you'll get lightning-fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back. But you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. That's 800-797-1292.
Think of us as your cool roommate that has this innate gift of somehow always picking winners and never bugs you about doing the dishes or paying rent. Sports gaming strategies and information 24/7.
Get the winning edge.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, some college football conversation to end out this Thursday on FFC. Lisa, guy, we talked about the game between Indiana and Ohio State. Indiana, of course, an easy schedule. Just one win against a team that is above 500 at the FBS level currently. That's the reigning national runner-up in Washington. Some of that really is against all that they can do. They have beaten 3 teams at an even 500, including the reigning national champs in Michigan. But we understand what the metrics say. Lisa Guy, let me pose you the question like this. Indiana is minus 330 right now to reach the college football playoff. It is expected, of course, as a double-digit dog in Columbus on Saturday, that Indiana loses that football game. If the Hoosiers do in fact lose, but cover the number against Ohio State, make it look like a competitive top 5 tilt, do you think Indiana will have done enough to be a college football playoff team at 11-1?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's disrespectful, and we've talked about this, that they have Penn State ranked ahead of them. And how do you have the team that has 1 loss in the conference against a team that is undefeated in the conference be in front of them? It's disrespectful. So yes, assuming that this is a close game, and 13.5, 13 or less, and they're in it, and it's a fourth quarter game, you got to do right by them. I'm sorry. You might not like it, not you personally, but the public, but they're deserving. Right. If the shoe was on the other foot and it was Penn State, Michigan, or Ohio State, and those teams had that resume, we know for a fact they'd be clearly in the playoff. And
there's no doubt about it.
Crazy.
And we went very quickly from expansion into 12 teams to making it a more equitable field, to have these feel-good stories of teams performing in a historic and generational way, to being a really cool aspect of the changing landscape of college football, to quickly becoming, well, these new brands do not deserve it based on pedigree. Listen, Indiana does not control its strength of schedule. What Indiana can control is what they do to easy said schedule. And what they have done is win all 10 games by an average margin of victory of better than 30 points per. I completely agree with Joe.
I just want to say one thing, Joe. This is why we have expansion. We don't have expansion to let in more SEC teams like Ole Miss and Tennessee if they're not deserving. We have expansion to allow those other teams that haven't had a shot in recent years to get in, like Indiana.
That is the idea, right? To make it an even playing field. That if you have a great season, you are rewarded. You are not docked or defined based on winning football games. If that is the precedent we want to set, that betting spreads and projections in quality wins matter only and losses make no difference, then we're in a dangerous landscape from here on out, where the SEC might as well crown their own champion and the rest of college football can play for a national title. I don't hope we get to that, but we shall see. Joe, huge weekend in the Big 12 as well. 2 games kicking off at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time simultaneously that could define the conference as a whole. Colorado, 3.5-point road favorite in KC, taking on the upset-minded Jayhawks, who are playing much better football in the last month. Arizona State in Tempe welcomes in BYU after the Cougars were beat by KU for their only loss of the season. Both spreads are 3.5, Joe. CU the favorite on the road in Arrowhead. Arizona State, 3.5-point favorite at home against BYU. What's your feeling for a big Big 12 Saturday?
I lean to both favorites, and I like the way Colorado's defense is coming in. They're built to play from behind. I'm still not sold on Devin Neal and Jalen Daniels playing much better, but I haven't seen them play from behind. They've been able to dictate the tempo against BYU and Iowa State. What happens if they fall behind 10-0? Not so sure about that. But I really like Kenny Dillingham, and what Sam Levitt and Jake Scadaboo have done. I mean, unbelievable. And this defense, everybody talks about the offense. Levitt, Scadaboo. But they've been doing it with defense. Cam, I call him Jake.
Yeah. All good.
All right. But did you watch that Kansas State game? I mean, Levitt didn't, he attacked them over the top, made some great plays. That defense has shut down opponents in back-to-back weeks. Give me Arizona State, baby.
For sure. It's going to be a difficult test for a BYU offense that has struggled as of late. There'll be a lot of reliance on a BYU defense that must step up against one of the best two-way players, at least offensively in college football, in Cam Scadaboo. He's Joe Lisi. I'm Ben Stevens. Show returns tomorrow, noon Eastern time on Sports Grid Radio.
Now you've done it.
You found the advantage for gaming, odds, and more. But we call it the winning edge for short. This is the Sports Grid Radio Network.